thank you all for being here. I think I know most of you. If not, I'm Paul Mayer, the CEO of the Garland Chamber of Commerce, and by virtue of that, the CEO of the Dallas County Manufacturers Association. I want to, again, thank you all for coming to learn about what everyone from our president to the Department of Labor and all the folks here believe is the next coming of how we're going to get the skilled workforce that you all been asking for a very long time delivered. There's a lot of moving parts here in this room, a lot of players, and I won't try to recognize everybody, but I do want to recognize some groups. You'll meet all the panelists, participants as they come up, but some folks in the room that are key players. Dr. Erica Crump, raise your hand, Erica. Special moment of silence for Dr. Crump. She's just opening up a brand new high school in Garland, our tech high school, which got finished like 11 seconds before students started to arrive.
Maybe
2 seconds. So she's
a very busy week before.
So when we talk about pipelines and getting folks, this is where it starts. And our friends from Texas Can Academy, our newest friend, part of that workforce that's yet to be. Our friends from Richland College, Ron and team, Celeste and Con, they're our in-house partners that many of you have known for a very long time, thanks to Lori's efforts and all of yours. We've been funding, or we, easy to say we, they have been funding and working with you on the skills development grants. The rest of you I'm going to kind of talk about as the reason why we're here, our companies. And we're going to do this. Typically, we'd ask you to go around the room and introduce yourself, but that's always subjective, and Jessica will go on for 3 days talking about. No, that was me today. But to our panelists and to our support team, I want to talk about who you have in the room and why we're here today. The Garland Chamber and the Dallas County Manufacturers Association have been around for a very long time. Manufacturers Association for the last 10 or 11 years, Chamber for about 120 years, with the sole purpose of building the economy. And for a long time, building the economy is synonymous with building the workforce. It's now reached that critical stage, which, change happens when it gets more painful to stand still. You all are here because you're in pain. Amen? Amen. And the solution is here because of that need. So to our support team, who we have in this room are folks that have been working with the Dallas County Manufacturers Association for a long time, some relatively new, expressing the needs for higher level skills. Chad Brummett's going to come up and talk a little bit about his journey on this apprenticeship pathway. His particular area is in CNC, but he's also getting skills in the industrial maintenance and also in welding, getting kicked off. A lot of you have talked about keeping machines running. Kevin Tolley with Plastipack, you make about 5 billion pieces of plastic a year. Got a lot of machines running at a pretty high rate of speed. Our friends from NutraBiotech, BJ and his team, relatively new, making a lot of the things that makes people's lives better, nutraceuticals, cosmetics, those kind of things. We have machine shops in this room. We have hat makers in this room. We have, who else do we have in this room? We have Atlantic Food Bars making all the display cases for all the grocery stores. And is Arrow, did Arrow Fabrication, there she is, there's Scarborough, good to see you. Miles and miles and miles of copper tubes that go into all kinds of air conditioning and heating systems. Atlas Copco, we mentioned Atlas Copco. They assemble the rigs that go all over the world that mine for copper and gold and all kinds of other commodities, build huge rigs to do that. Garrett Metal Detectors, household name if you've ever been to an airport. Electronics, General Dynamics, Hetco, Interceramic, J&A, Carly, on and on. The Kraft Heinz, everybody knows Kraft Heinz. You can't sit down at a dinner table without Kraft Heinz. They also have a lot of machines that need to be maintained on a regular basis. Mapei, which builds most of the adhesives and grouts for the flooring industry. Very big business micropack electronics. I mentioned Nutrabiotech, Telesco Weathermatic. So the common denominator, while everybody makes different kinds of things, the common denominator is they need people, they need skilled people, they need higher levels of skilled people. Actually, they need all kinds of people, but we're talking about the higher level skills, and this is how we got introduced into apprenticeships through the Dallas County Community College. Where's our community college team? Roy and Nick. Mark Hayes will be here in just a little bit. Introduced to Bernie and her team back about, I guess, 3 or 4 months ago, which I think in the scheme of things has been a pretty fast-moving effort to get you all here today. We've got one skill set up and running in CNC. Chad's going to talk about that. And our purpose today is to talk about how we can meet your needs. So I like to begin with the end in mind. When you walk out of here today, you should have all the questions answered that would allow you to get on board with getting your skills needs met of all the variety of apprenticeships. We're going to break this down into about 3 or 4 sections. We're going to have the folks from the Department of Labor, Texas Workforce Commission, and the Workforce Board of Dallas County talk to you about what is apprenticeships. When they say we're with the government, we're here to help, they mean it. They mean it. They mean it, truthfully. And I say that without a whole lot of irony, because a lot of folks, when we first started talking about this, they said, okay, apprenticeships, that's a government program, that's a union program, and this is a right-to-work state, and really, does it really fit? And the fact that you're all here today is that we didn't scare you off with that, and we're going to get the real story from John and his team about the answer to that question. And then we're going to talk with the Bernie's team about what is their role in helping to facilitate. We wouldn't be here today without Bernie and her team and Jobs for the Future and all those folks. We have a special guest from upstate New York, one of my favorite places, Syracuse, the Manufacturers Association of Central New York. A large manufacturing association is going to talk to them about terms. Hey, Britt. You're down here on front, but Dad used to do that in church. People that came in late and sat in the back pew, he would make. And then we're going to, from the DCMA standpoint, you'll learn that we are official facilitator, sponsor for this apprenticeship program. So it's locally based, locally controlled, based on your folks attaining their level of competency and you controlling that whole process. So you've got all the support in the world, the people that will talk about how we get going, how we're going to fund it, how we're going to train you, and what our role is in this whole process. So that's what today looks like. Again, when you walk out of here, you should have everything for every question, and we'd like you to be signing on the dotted line saying, let's take the next steps. I've been listening to you all for years, and I think I could safely say I know a lot of the questions are on your mind, but I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes getting your expectations. We mentioned a couple of questions that come up, but what do you want to achieve out of this? Jessica, when you walk out of this room, what do you want to know that you don't know right now?
I want to know how feasible this is from operation right now, that we could support it, that it can support our needs as we look 6, 12, 18, 24 months down the road.
Okay. Feasible for you. The Nutrabiotech team, BJ, Stacy, any specific expectations that you have? I know you're a good friend of Chad, and Chad's been talking about this program for a while. What is your expectation?
Like she said, we're looking forward to make a sustainable growth, and so in order to make that happen, we need to hire good talents from local on a timely basis, especially the machine operating folks and the maintenance tech. It will be very essential to make a sustainable growth in our operation. I hope that this area give us feasible solutions like that.
Outstanding. Monty, from Heinz Kraft Heinz, what's your expectation for today?
But just really talking about courses, what we're going to align to. We shared the initial meeting, we're ready to move. So just have good conversations about what that looks like, length of the apprenticeship program, et cetera.
Kevin, do you have anything that you'd like to add from Plastipack? We're going to get to the point where we're repeating ourselves, but
Everybody's pretty much hit everything that I want to know.
Then that key word is amen. We can just. We started with a religious theme, and those of you that know me know that that's not applicable to me at all. But I thought we'd elevate this. Folks at HATCO, have we touched your expectations for today, or?
Well, for me, one, I wanted to get to know, I'm new to HATCO and to the HR world there. I've been in manufacturing for a short time, so I kind of wanted to know what this team was about and how maybe anything that's being offered with like our company. So just kind of to learn a little bit today, hopefully.
Our first economic development effort back in the late 30s and 40s, HATCO, we brought them as Byron Raleigh Hat Company. They've been making more Western hats in Garland than any other place on the planet. Britt, I don't want to put you on the spot. We've got some big companies and we've got some relatively small companies. What's your expectation coming in today as a little bit smaller than a craft?
I'm just looking to see what the actual pieces are that are needed for the program to be successful. My smaller company, I think they're there, but I just have to flush out.
So some of you, like Monty, are ready to sign up today and get going. Some of you are looking for how does this really fit. And the beautiful thing about being part of an association, which is why DCMA did this as a facilitator, is that we can accommodate classes. Tad wants to put together, 300 or 400 apprentices starting 10 or 20. Starting right away, but some of you will have ones and twos, and how do we aggregate that? Well, that's what this thing is about. So we'll get those questions. Micropack from an electronic standpoint, Shonda?
Well, I'm really focused on the people part. I think what we need to work on is being able to leverage and assess emotional intelligence. So if I'm really trying to pull from a competency base, that's my top priority because, as we know, from a training perspective and a personnel perspective, the common denominator is emotional intelligence and competence.
Well said. Well said. Olivera.
That's exactly what I was thinking. What we need is, technical skills are what we're looking for, but we also need someone that's going to fit our culture and understand our companies have a different type of culture. And so the individuals that we're trying to get to blend with us will fit and be there for the long term.
I'm glad you said that, and I expected it to come from that side of the room because I know those folks. But it's not just the skills, it's the fit. And one of the things about DCMA and working with this group of folks, it really is, every successful company has a successful culture, and that's what we're looking to do. And that's something that doesn't always get across. I know that with Lori, and she's been a warrior on the soft skills. That's that kind of that emotional intelligence side, getting that across. It's not just can you weld, but can you work with the group, and so we appreciate that. Robin, did I miss anything from your industry? Anybody that has just had their hand about right here and just didn't get all the way up, that really had another point they wanted to make? Yes.
As part of the pipeline, we need to know, now it's Khan Academy, we need to know what are your needs, what's the technology that you're using, so we can be sure that our kids are trained on that. So they are a ready supply for you when they walk across that high school stage, to get that diploma, that you have we're already working on soft skills, but we really want to be able to know what are your needs. And I think that's important that we communicate that, because they all may be different. But what are the tools that they're using? What are the systems that they're using? What do you need as an employer in your employees as far as the training? That we want to be able to serve that need to you as a community member.
You all will quickly learn how blessed we are to have Dr. Crump in the positions that she's in, because of all and I started out life as an educator, but one of the things that you didn't mention, and sort of mentioned in the sustainable piece of this and the whole pipeline piece of this, our chairman for the workforce pipeline is where does that pipeline start? And it starts with people like Erica has, like Texas Khan Academy has, that whole pipeline. So we hopefully have put a room together that talks about the complete spectrum of getting the folks in the door, getting them trained, getting them acclimated, getting them part of your culture. Kevin's boss, who is not shy about setting pretty aggressive goals, gave us a full year to get this all implemented. So I mean, we're in September, and we've got another couple of months, and we're cruising. So yeah. So thanks Scott next time you see him. But we're moving very rapidly, and one of the key pieces that I'm going to get to as soon as I shut up is how this whole thing rolls. And so I think from a panel standpoint, and this is not any of these folks' first rodeo, and it's probably not anything they haven't heard before. But throughout the panels that we have, we should be addressing this. There'll be a time at the end to call us to task if we miss a piece, and then we'll leave time at the end for some one-on-one meetings to get down to the fine questions that, how does this really work for me? Is that fair? Everybody should know where the facilities are. The refreshments are here. Just you're not going to insult anybody if you get up and go, as long as you come back. Jessica. Okay. Bernie, anything else I need to say? No. Good. Bernie knows me. Just shut up and let's go. From the Department of Labor, Office of Apprenticeship, right here in Dallas, Texas, John Kuzner is a person I've just got a chance to meet not too long ago when we had a meeting. And so John's going to kick this off from, I don't know, is it 40,000 feet, John, that you work at, or are you close?
About 30,000.
30,
Yeah.
30.
Our budget was cut, so we had, we had to drop a little.
From the Department of Labor, and we like aerobic exercise, so we'll introduce each one, and you can apply right now. Apply. All right. Awesome. Okay.
Let me test my skills here.
There we go.
Okay, great. So my task today is to provide you the 30,000-foot perspective from the Department of Labor on what is apprenticeship, how does it work, how we got here, and really priorities and trends. So give you the big picture. And I have to do this in 5 minutes on the agenda. So if you will understand, I got some busy slides. I got a lot of notes. I'll be more reading from the notes, but I want to get this information to you. We can answer questions and all that down the road. So let's dive into it. Okay, so the best approach is to kind of give you brief highlights in a historical perspective. So the first milestone there, 1937, the National Apprenticeship Act, or what they call the Fitzgerald Act, established a national apprenticeship system, and it put that under the Department of Labor, the responsibility for monitoring and managing that system. And that was the big milestone. And we just now celebrated in 2017, August, we just celebrated our 80th year of apprenticeship in the Department of Labor. So clearly, it's a model that works. It's been around that long. Otherwise, it wouldn't have survived. But it has been the best kept secret in workforce development, because unless you were in the traditional skilled trades, in a union environments, you didn't hear a whole lot about apprenticeship. And that is not at all what it is, but that's kind of what it was relegated to. So for about 75 years, it remained a secret. Okay, it remained a secret, and apprenticeship was a quiet little division under the Employment and Training Administration and Department of Labor, and they just kind of went about their business and managed apprenticeship, and it stayed within those boundaries. But within the last decade or so, we had in 2008 we had the financial crash, and the impact of the recession that followed that. And so it got a lot of folks thinking and a lot of questions being asked, because it exposed the growing skills gap, the middle skills gap in the national workforce. And not that there weren't other contributing factors to this over periods of time, but the crash kind of exposed that vulnerable spot. It highlighted the gap. So many sectors, that's across many sectors, and questions started being asked about how we can address this growing problem. So we get into, the current administration started asking those questions. The president and the labor secretary started asking those questions, went and looked at other nations' programs, went to Europe and spent a lot of time at the European nations, looking at Germany in particular. And so 2014 rolls around, and all this thought and questioning results in a couple of things. Primarily, it resulted in legislation called the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA. So that legislation updated the nation's workforce system that was perhaps overdue. But it changed a lot of the rules by which the system worked, and it redefined the way they measure performance and success. In the process of that, and throughout that legislation, is woven the model of apprenticeship and the use of registered apprenticeship in that context, within the workforce system. Because the thinking was, this is the key cornerstone strategy to address this growing skills gap. And apprenticeship is a model that applies and will help develop the broader work-based learning programs and building career lattices and career pathways. So we get the there we go. So we enact the legislation, and now in 2016, last year, the steps and the changes from WIOA are required to begin to be implemented, and those changes are taking effect within the workforce system across the board. A huge influx of funding went into supporting this change. Again, because apprenticeship is woven throughout the language of that legislation, throughout all of it. So a couple of big pieces get passed. The American Apprenticeship Initiative, or AAI grants, it poured $175 million into public-private partnerships between employers, organized labor, nonprofits, local government, education institutions, all in attempts to expand high-quality apprenticeships. The grantees on this grant were on their way to creating and filling more than 34,000 new apprentices in high-growth and high-tech industries. And those included specifically a focus in healthcare, IT, advanced manufacturing, financial services, logistics and transportation. Also, there were more than 170 employers, colleges, and labor organizations that signed on to be apprenticeship leaders. And that stands for Leaders of Excellence in Apprenticeship Development, Education, and Research. Leaders, LEADERS. By starting and expanding their own work-based learning programs and encouraging their peer companies to follow. Together, the organizations in the Leaders Program pledged to create nearly 20,000 apprenticeship positions. We also, under this grant, you also had more than 200 colleges nationwide join in and develop a consortium they call the RAC, Registered Apprenticeship College Consortium, which promotes to turning their programs into on-the-job training programs and offering college credits towards associate's or bachelor's degrees. Okay. Then later in 2016 came the accelerator grants, almost $10 million available. Those were designed to plan and build partnerships for apprenticeship and expand apprenticeship and diversification specifically within that. Following that, expansion grants, another $50 million went out, and that was designed to scale up state efforts. So those went out to the states, 50 states and the territories, to scale up their efforts to expand apprenticeship by integrating it into the education and workforce systems, and engaging industry and other partners to scale and expand apprenticeship to new populations, and again, new sectors, specifically IT, manufacturing, healthcare, infrastructure, and transportation. Finally, we had $30 million in private partnerships, or industry partnerships, and those grants were industry-driven partnerships to leverage collaboration with the workforce system, workforce development organizations, industry associations, labor groups, training providers, all nationwide. Which brings us to today, in 2017, and the most recent executive order, expanding apprenticeship, creating a task force to set a specific set of recommendations to the president on how we're going to further expand apprenticeship, how we're going to open registered apprenticeship to apprenticeship in general and other existing industry training programs, certification programs, professional development programs. That we don't know what that's going to look like yet. The task force is still being selected, and we'll so stay tuned and watch the news. We'll be hearing more about that. Okay, so a lot of money pumped out into the system. What do we get for that? Today, 2017, we were at 545,000 apprentices nationwide. That's a 45% growth from 2013. We're at 375,000. So our goal by the end of next year is 600,000 apprentices, with an original target way back when of 750,000 apprentices in 2019. That was the previous administration. The new plan under this executive order, could be 5 million apprentices by 2020, and that's a lot of growth. So, but there's the opportunity for everyone in this room to be involved with it. That's how much the Department of Labor, in government in general, and in economic development experts say apprenticeship is a model that will work for whatever it is that you do. Okay. So what's in it for you? What can you get out of it? How does it benefit you? Well, the return on investment studies have shown, national studies, international studies shown, for every dollar that a company invests into an apprenticeship training program, they get a ROI of $1.47. So it is a great return on the investment, and it's worth it. I will just put a quick plug in, because my 5 minutes has now elapsed. I'll put a quick plug in for National Apprenticeship Week. Ask about it. Think about how you might be able to get involved. It's in November, and hopefully we can talk about doing something with the Dallas County Manufacturers Association. All right. My contact information, if you want to jot that down, and a lot of what I talked about, I threw a lot of numbers at you and read a lot of bureaucratic ease to you, is all summarized in a brochure you can get off the Department of Labor website, Federal Resources Playbook, and I can give you all the individual website if you want to catch me afterwards. But all of that is captured in that Federal Resources Playbook. It tells you where to go and how to get your share.
John, thank you, John. And that's drinking out of a fire hose. CIA calls that waterboarding. We just call that normal part of how we do things here at the Dallas County Manufacturers Association. We're coming down a little bit. We're at 30,000 feet. George, you're at
20,000. That's
20.
all they give us money for.
We're blessed to have George McIntyre. His official title is Apprenticeship Program Specialist, Workforce Development Division, but he's the guy in Austin that coordinates all his activities. So let's give it up for George McIntyre.
That one?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see if I got this. Hey, there you go. Like I said, my name is George McIntyre. I'm with the Texas Workforce Commission. Little history. A long time ago, I was an apprentice with the National Rubber Workers Union, which is no longer around. They're with the Metal Workers Union now, I think. So all this stuff we've been talking about, I actually went through it many years ago. So I was rather ugly back then, but I feel that I'm a lot more attractive now after going through it. All right. So like John, I have some notes, and I tend to go off them, but I'll try to stay on task because we're under a time crunch. So TWC has a what we call the Office of Apprenticeship, which was created about the same time that DOL released the Apprenticeship USA money. And Texas was fortunate enough to receive one of those grants to work on apprenticeship. So part of that grant is to expand apprenticeship. And what we mean by expand apprenticeship, it's in new occupations and new populations, is what DOL wants us to do, to reach those rather high numbers that they want to get in apprenticeship. So when we talk about expanding apprenticeship, we look at traditional jobs first. Everybody knows what traditional type of apprenticeship jobs are: plumbers, welders, carpentry. So we're looking to expand in the populations that these type of traditional apprenticeship programs look at. The other part is a non-traditional. Basically everything else. We kind of are taking the position at our office that we will talk to anybody about apprenticeship. We don't care if you're a baker or you're some other IT related. We've had conversations with IT related businesses and call centers. So really, if someone calls our office and wants to talk about apprenticeship, we're more than welcome to talk about expanding. So I mentioned underrepresented population. Everybody asks, well, what are those are? Well, DOL went in and looked at who traditionally is in apprenticeships. And so now we have a target to get more women in the trades, or really any type of apprenticeable type occupation, and also people with disabilities. We're trying to kind of open up the scope of who can go through an apprenticeable type job. So part of the job that we're also doing is trying to integrate apprenticeship into our workforce system and into educational entities. One way that we're doing that, we're having these regional roundtables. We did one in Dallas, and we did another one in Laredo, and we have a few other ones, where we bring all the partners together. Businesses, educational entities, you name it, everybody's invited to sit down at a table, and we want to talk to you about like what the employer's needs are, how can educational entities and registered apprenticeship programs all work together to meet those needs. So I know that was one of the questions, is how this is going to help you, or what the benefit is. Well, instead of you hiring somebody off the street, and even if they're qualified for the position you're going to put them in, let's face it, you still have to train them to do things the way that you want them done. Versus under apprenticeship, you're teaching them the way you want the final product to be. So that's why we try to bring all these people to the table to discuss how they can all help each other get to this final product. So in working with the local workforce boards, which Lori will, I'm not going to edge in on her part. We're working with them to help integrate registered apprenticeship into their kind of their menu of services. And like John said, years ago, it was the best kept secret. Well, the secret's out right now. So another thing that we've been doing for a long time is TWC has been contracting with apprenticeship programs and local education agencies, and we use a fund called 133, which is under the Texas Education Code. And we fund certain programs based on their contact hours, a small percentage of that. And I think it's around $4 or so right now per contact hour. If they register with TWC, we will pay per apprentice a certain amount of money. And here's my contact information. I'll be available afterwards. So appreciate y'all taking the time to come out.
Thank you, George. Now at ground level in Dallas County, the president of the Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas, a personal hero of mine, Lori Larea, is a person we worked with for a lot of years. A lot of folks in this room have worked with Lori and through our skills development grant. So let's give it up for Lori Larea.
Okay, gang, you know me. It's cleanup hitter. I was asked here today specifically to bring money. And George, get that money to me quickly. I'm the product of an apprentice. My dad returned from World War II, Army captain, took on a 4-year training program at Texaco to become a machinist. 39-year career made his life possible and our lives possible. It's a heck of a career. It reestablished the middle class in the 40s. We need to bring it back, guys. It's the only thing that's going to save us, I'm afraid. And kids today, and I love them, I'm the mom of a 30-year-old, and I have a thing for the 20-somethings. I think they're amazing. They don't want to learn sitting in a class. They want to work and learn. They want to see something happen every day. They don't just want to wait. So it's sort of back to the future. We got to do it. We got to see what we can come up with. I'll give you 2 examples of how far we've come with the Community College District just in the last 6 months. Amazon, working with us. Community College does the curriculum. Amazon pays the wages while the person trains. Web developer services with an emphasis on hiring vets. We pay the training cost. So we can back up the training costs for the community college to make these apprenticeships happen. We're not coming here today to say, write us a check. We're saying, pay somebody while you teach them how to work. We'll teach them what you need them to learn while they work. Work and learn has been going well since the 60s, and we gave up on it. We decided to go to college for 4 years. We can afford it. Well, that 4 has turned into 5 and 6 for most people, and we've got to find a way to get people better prepared. They're not prepared for work if they've spent that much time in academia. It's the truth. And in debt, heavily in debt. Yes, most are. The other thing I want to explain to you, the other thing we're doing with Amazon is beyond web services, we're starting cybersecurity. You know, I know you guys. You are the most sophisticated manufacturing organization. I kind of have to explain that when I talk to people, the Dallas County Manufacturers Association. Chad's mom, chair of our board, Mark, had been on our board for many years. I know you guys, I know what you do, and I know the dynamics of it. You want to create. It is a creative organization here. You want to serve and you want to sell product, but you want to create. And I know what it takes to please you in terms of a workforce. Give us a chance to do a little more for you on your workforce. They're here. We have now the vocational rehabilitation program is now our partner and will be located in most of our workforce centers. If I had room in the Garland Center, they'd be there right now. We got to work on that one. But we also have a strong connect to veterans and a very strong connect to the refugee community. I'm looking and looking. Tomorrow, and I mentioned, I actually am the below the sea level person, born and raised in Port Arthur, Texas. So my heart is with the Harvey evacuees. I've been working at the center. We're having a job fair tomorrow. If you haven't signed up, I still have room for a few employers. Got to make my plug. We put the call out Tuesday afternoon at 3:30, and by close of business yesterday, we had 91 employers. So we're filling up the Sheraton Hotel. Some of these folks are tired of evacuating, and I have to tell them, I know, I've been evacuating since I was 3. That's why I left that community probably at 26. It's a hard life to live the coastal life in this time of year, and if you've evacuated once or twice, you kind of get tired of the drill. So our prayers for Florida. I am very concerned for family and friends in that place. There's nowhere to run. People from Port Arthur want to stay. People from Beaumont want to stay. We're working with them. It may be a job, a workforce you've never seen before, people you've never interviewed before. I had a pipe fitter come up to me. He looked to be about a little younger than me, maybe. And he said, I need to go back to work, but my toolbox is right now under about 10 feet of water at ExxonMobil in Beaumont. I said, you know what? Our program can buy you that toolbox if I can find you a job here. I mean, if you'll stay in the community and work here as a pipe fitter, we'll find you that toolbox. We'll pay for it. Those are the kinds of things we do. Let's make a worker out of the people in front of us. It is a culture shift sometimes to bring in people that aren't the traditional model, and yet, what have you got? You got to find a workforce. We've kind of run out of traditionalists, haven't we? And most of you know that. Look at this audience. It's one of the most diverse manufacturing audiences you'll see. And people don't expect that when they hear Texas. So here to help. Paul knows how to find me, but my number is open to everybody. It's 214-384-6549. That's my cell, and I answer it pretty much 20 hours a day. So I'm here for you. We'll get the money together. We'll pay the college district to do the skills training. Sign up, guys. This is the future. It's where we got to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. We're always going to, in the heat of the cat herding thing I mentioned before, we're going to miss some folks. I'd be real remiss if I didn't recognize the chairman of the Workforce Investment Council for the state of Texas, Wes Jury. Wes and I have been doing chamber work for a long time. He's gone on to working now with workforce and working at the Department of Labor level, which he was doing before, but he still chairs the Workforce Investment Council. I had the privilege of serving on that for about 6 years. It's where all the agencies that want to build their workforce come together and make things happen at a faster rate. Wes, we appreciate your service.
Appreciate yours.
We're moving now into, we're down at the working level. As Lori said, she's below sea level, and she wasn't kidding. We're coming into the group, and I'm going to turn this over to Bernie Lynch, who really is the person that got us connected with all these people and really the reason why we're here today. So let's give it up for Bernie and her team and let her moderate this piece of the panel.
Paul keeps talking about this being Bernie's team, and I want to share with you, it's not my team. There's a woman in the room, Gary Scott. She's with Jobs for the Future out of Boston, and she's the director of the federal contract. When they were showing you all the funding that was given for apprenticeship, part of that was awarding contracts to a handful of organizations in the country who would go out and make sure that there were areas of specialty. So our contract was as subject matter experts in manufacturing apprenticeship. And so I happened to have met Paul in my work here with Mark Hayes in the Dallas County Community College District, which is how I ended up kind of colliding the two projects. So, I was down here working with a college district. We talked about in 2 years, Bill J. Priest Center is going to be open, and it'll be this fabulous kind of next generation, small batch, prototype, shared economy makerspace where we could do workforce development. And Paul said, well, I kind of need that now. And so a whole conversation about apprenticeship broke out. And that's kind of what led to how do we take the college district and align them with apprenticeship. So Jerry Scott is really the director of our program. And with me here today are two folks from our team. Our team's about, 6-8 people. And that's it. Jerry's from Boston, Martha's from New York, Scott's from Ohio, I'm from Pittsburgh. And our team's pretty diverse, but part of what we do is we just kind of work around the country with a lot of different places and just really help to support organizations like yours getting up and running in apprenticeship. So we're going to have Martha talk about her organization. It's actually a manufacturers association out of New York, central New York, and they have been doing apprenticeship. So part of that is kind of reassuring you that, what Paul's done at this point is he went ahead and he proceeded, and we got DCMA put together as a registered apprentice organization. He now is a, and your board voted on it, and he went ahead and signed the first set of standards. Carly, did the CNC operator. So we kind of went through that process. So we stood you up as an organization and said, you're now a registered apprentice organization. And now this next step is, how do we talk to each of your employers about what occupations do you need apprenticeship in, and how will it work? So it's part of what we're going to walk through right now. And I'm going to, there's Lori's slide. So it's all right. So I'm actually going to have, so I'm going to have Scott come on up and have him kind of walk through kind of the slide deck as far as a little bit about the organization and what we're doing. So this is Scott Ellsworth of, I think, Cincinnati.
Thanks, Bernie. So just real quick about me and why I'm here and why you should listen to me, because not just because I'm the best looking guy up here. Actually, I'm 26 plus years in manufacturing. Plastipac was a customer of ours. I ran a tooling company in Ohio for a long time. And really, I'm here to translate this into manufacturing English. I'll try not to do that too publicly, but when we get one-on-one, I'll translate it for you into manufacturing English. So, who is JFF and why would we be here? What difference do we make? Why did we get a contract from USDOL? So JFF, Jobs for the Future, is a Boston-based nonprofit. We've been around for about 30 years, and I say we because as contractors, we identify as we're part of the family. Been around for about 35 years doing work primarily with underserved, economically disadvantaged individuals and getting them into jobs that will give them living wages, give them an opportunity to move along in their life and get them to not be dependent upon other sources of income. And so they're really a national leader in bridging that gap between education and work. And probably what's most important about this for us is that we see apprenticeship as a really great tool for getting to those folks that typically we would not as manufacturers be hiring. So my peers in Hamilton, Ohio, we all say, gosh, we have 4% unemployment, where are the bodies coming from? We have to look at people that we didn't typically look at. And the way to do that is that we have to build them into the workforce that works for us. So where am I pointing to? I just went by. So, see, I'm looking here and it's not moving on my iPad and I'm kind of like, why? So why apprenticeship? And why should it matter to you and why would you do it? And I usually share this story about the company that I was running. We were about 40 people up in Hamilton. And I talk about training and how we did training. And by the way, Paul, I know you pushed us to move quickly, but I noticed that the time schedule does not apply here. Okay, all right. Just checking. I wanted to be sure. You've got the hook. So what I wanted to tell you is, this is a typical entry-level training for somebody at our company, and I bet you'll recognize this. It's day one. Chad comes in. He's my new employee. Bernie's his trainer. I say, hey, Chad, how you doing? Today's your first day. Welcome. The bathrooms are down here. Break time is at 12:30. Quitting time's at 3. You're going to be working with Bernie. She's going to teach you everything you need to know about running this machine. 3 days in, I go, hey, Bernie, do you think Chad could operate on his own for a little bit? I got an emergency. Bernie says, yeah, he could probably make it without crashing the machine. Chad never sees Bernie again. And that's typical of the way that we train because we live in a world of emergency. And we're all trying to do that. So what we need to do is we need to build a structured program. And that's what apprenticeship is. Apprenticeship is a structured program where we say, this is what it takes to become a qualified operator. This is what we got to do. We're going to make you into a qualified operator. So the other reason that JFF is here, I should have shared this with you, but of the contractors within all of the contracts, we dominate. We are the contract to be with. So just be glad. For Texas, only the best. Okay. You don't believe this? I'm wrong? So what are the benefits to you of apprenticeship beyond the $1.47 that comes back to you in return on investment? The real benefit, probably the most important benefit, is that you build your own workforce, that you control how people are trained, that you are the one who's putting them into jobs that you want them to be in, and they are going to be far more committed to you than Chad, who came in and on day 3, Bernie disappeared. Because Chad's going to be like, if that's all the more important this job is, then it really doesn't matter, and I don't need to do a lot with that. So for us, our objective is to help you to understand that registered apprenticeship is really a great tool for you, and it's not hard to do. And the second component of what we want to talk about is not just what registered apprenticeship is, but probably more importantly, why do it with an intermediary sponsor? Why don't you just go out and do this yourself as a business? And that's what we're going to let Martha talk a bit about. She's going to kind of help you to understand what the core components are of an apprenticeship, and then she's going to help you to understand what it looks like to have an intermediary sponsor. And then I get to go through all of the detail of what Paul signed up to do. And we'll share that with you there in a minute. So Martha.
That's me, huh?
That's you.
Okay.
Martha Ponge.
There we go. So, good afternoon to all of you, and thank you very much for allowing me to come and speak as well. As Scott said, I work for the Manufacturing Association of Central New York, and we are the center post of the Manufacturers Alliance of New York State. So we're kind of like the governing board of all of the manufacturers associations that operate in New York State. We started about 2 years ago to talk to all of our employers in situations just like this. And I heard, I can't find a worker. How am I going to train a worker? I hear this word apprenticeship. Everybody says it, but I don't know what that is. I work in HR. My job is operations, and I got to get product out the door. I don't have time to learn about all these things. How am I supposed to find a skilled workforce, and who's going to help me do it? And we, as the Manufacturers Association of Central New York, said, we're going to help you do it, because we think that we are the best equipped to know what your needs are. You call us all the time. You participate in our events all the time. And we very often have a group of very diverse industries in our room, so we hear from many different people what their needs are. And that's going to be much the same way that Dallas County is going to be working for you as an intermediary. They're going to take on some of that scary part of what is it and what do I do and how do I become involved, and they're going to be in a position to answer all of your questions for you. So this kind of like drinking from the fire hose thing, it goes on all the time when people talk about apprenticeship. And really, people want to know what is apprenticeship and how is it going to work for me. Okay? So when people start training programs normally, everybody has the best intentions. And like Scott said, you start out with these great intentions, but life gets in the way. So one of the nice things about a registered apprenticeship program is it provides a structure to your training. It sets out a framework, and you can always refer back to it as you go through the process. You know where you are, you know what goals you have yet to attain, and you can keep moving. So what happens in an apprenticeship? Well, number one, you are the number one in an apprenticeship. Apprenticeship can't exist without an employer, okay? Apprentices are your workers. They're the people that you are training. That training takes place in two different ways. One is that structured on-the-job training, and number two is related technical instruction. So there's a certain part of the job that's learned with you on a daily basis, and depending on the trade that someone is working in, that on-the-job training can take 1 year, 4 years, however long it is, again, based on whether you're a quality assurance auditor or whether you're a master tool maker, whether you're an industrial maintenance technician. Okay, it's going to take a different amount of time to learn that job. but there's going to be a specified amount of on-the-job training. There's also going to be related technical instruction that's delivered by somebody at a technical high school, at a community college, through maybe some online learning, OEM people that come in and do classes, lots of different ways. It can look different at every business, but there's a certain amount of related technical instruction that has to take place. The other thing that has to take place in an apprenticeship is a negotiated wage increase. So as your employee begins to become more valuable, as they get more skills from being on the job, or they get more technical information from going to school, there's a negotiated wage increase that takes place over the course of that training. Okay? And the last thing that happens is after they're done, they get this national credential. And I think it's really important to talk about a national credential because I think there's a couple of things that happen. Number one, people come to your door every day and they say, I worked as an industrial maintenance technician at Plastipac, okay? So what skills does that industrial maintenance technician have? Do you know? Are they the same skills that someone got from being an industrial maintenance technician at Carly Company? We don't know. When you have a national certification, you can see the exact skill set that that person has when they come to your door. And that's really good, okay? It helps you to hire someone. It helps you to know what their capacity for learning is and how much you're going to have to invest to get them up to speed. The other thing is that, again, you have what happened down in Houston. And so now we have a pipe fitter who needs to come here and go to work. Because he comes with that credential, there are a number of people in the Dallas area that can say, a journey level pipe fitter, I know what they do and I can hire him tomorrow. So it gives the employee the ability to be able to take those skills and be mobile if something should happen and they have to go somewhere else. So that's a really great part of it as well. So one kind of neat thing about apprenticeship is someone asked about feasibility, sustainability, how do I get it to work for me? The one thing I want all of you to know is that even though there is a structured on-the-job training and related technical instruction, the Department of Labor doesn't tell you how to do it on a day-to-day basis. It's very adaptable, very flexible to your work environment. You might be able to send somebody to school at night. You might have a workforce where you can let somebody go to school one day a week. You might want them to get a lot of technical instruction before they get on the floor and touch that piece of machinery that costs $100,000, okay? Or $1 million, whatever it is. So the Department of Labor is very flexible with how you administer that program. So now I want to talk about the difference between going it alone and using an intermediary. Okay. So we've talked about that Dallas County is going to become an intermediary. MACNY acts as an intermediary in New York State. We're the only manufacturing association in New York State to do that to date, and we plan on moving that across our state because we've seen how well it works for us. And what it is it's like having a partner in training, a partner in helping you out, somebody who answers all your questions so that you don't feel like you're in the foxhole alone. You're trying something new, but you don't have a way to do it, and you need some help. Okay? So number one, an intermediary is going to act as that single point of contact for you with the Department of Labor. Okay? If you have a question, okay, about registration, if you have a question about the kinds of occupations that you can use apprenticeship for to train, you can come to one source and you can ask all those questions. Okay? Number two, we can help you develop new trades. In New York State right now, we've just gotten an electromechanical technician. They like to call it mechatronics, which is a made-up word, doesn't really exist, but we have the first electromechanical technician program in New York State. as an intermediary, we were able to help about 7 different businesses across New York State who all came together and said, we know we need this kind of training, but we don't know how to do it. So we went out, we helped all of them. We did job studies, we did a lot of different stuff, and we put all the pieces together, and New York State wrote a brand new trade outline. We're doing it for different occupations that maybe didn't exist years ago, but are starting to come. We just started a data analytics program. We're talking again about cybersecurity. There's lots of different apprenticeable type trades, and as an intermediary, we can help you to decide, is there something at your business where you could use an apprenticeship to train someone the way that you need them to be trained? Okay. Someone asked about candidate profiles, selections of candidates, and what's important to them. I believe you said, trying to think, some of the soft skills, right? Emotional intelligence was one of the things. Well, we just ran kind of an accelerator program in New York, and we were asked to interview on behalf of about 40 different companies, employees. And each one of our employers had different qualifications that were important to them. Some thought that, you know, their math skills was the most important thing because they do a lot of calculations on the line. Someone else said, we hire for fit. We need to know that the person that comes in wants to be at our business and wants to work there. So we helped all of the companies identify which types of assessments they could use to get the ideal candidate. We found out where they could be administered. If we could do it for them, we did that for them. So again, people had a lot of questions that went into it. As an intermediary, we were able to kind of get all those questions answered for everyone at the same time. We helped to complete the documentation for that initial registration. And Scott's going to talk a bit more about that. But as an individual employer, if you were to go to the Department of Labor, there is a very long laundry list of all the different forms that you need to fill out. I have a degree in mechanical engineering. I have a master's degree in education, and the first time I had to fill out one of the applications with the state, I was about 15 minutes into it, and I thought, oh my gosh, I am the dumbest person on the face of the earth because I don't understand anything that they're saying. All these words, I filled out the paperwork wrong, they kept sending it back to me. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I thought, this must be what my companies are feeling like every day, and it's hard for them, and they don't have the resources to do that. So I better learn to do it really, really well so that I can explain it to you and help you through the process. And better yet, as an intermediary, maybe I can take some of that administrative burden and bring it down into something that's much, much more manageable. Make it, 2 sheets of paper instead of 100 sheets of paper. And so we worked on ways to do that. And again, Dallas is doing the same thing. And then as you start to plan your training, okay, we can help you with the trade outlines or the standards that you're going to be training to. We've been working with Tooling U in New York State to work on competency-based outlines so that people have an idea of the skills that they're actually trying to train towards. Instead of saying you're going to have to spend 150 hours training somebody in safety, well, what does that mean? So we've been working on expanding the outline so that they're much easier to understand, easier to read, and people from HR, people from operations, people that are in training, all of them can understand what's going on. And so they all now can play an active role in helping to train someone. And the last thing is that after we get you signed up, we don't want you to think that we're throwing you back out there and saying, okay, it was nice to meet you, we'll see you in 4 years. That's not what an intermediary does. An intermediary is there throughout the entire process, from when your apprentice signs up on day 1 and you as a company decide that this is how you're going to train someone, and 4 years or 2 years later when they're graduating, We want to be here to shake your hand and say congratulations on participating, and then we want to congratulate the person that you've trained. Okay. So as an intermediary, we're here. Our mission is to help you be successful running an apprenticeship program. That's what we want for you. We see that the biggest challenge you have is finding this workforce, and we want to make it easy for you to train people and make sure that you have the workforce you need to be successful and grow. And off to Scott.
So Martha alluded to what you would have to do if you wanted to be a sponsor. That's on the left. That's all on Paul. What you guys get to do is what's on the right, which is signing an agreement with Paul saying that you're going to live up to what you've agreed to, and you're going to go through the work processes, and we'll talk about this. And you know, I just thought of, on this next slide, don't think of us as an attorney. I just realized when I put that up there, that is really bad. That's not what we want. But everybody in here, almost everybody in here, has probably bought a house. And you go in and there's this stack of paper, it's about this thick, and the closing attorney says, okay, this piece of paper says that you're agreeing to make sure that the house is what you said it was going to be. Just sign it. You sign it. You don't read through 40 or 50 pages worth of stuff. The good news is this isn't 40 or 50 pages worth of stuff, but Paul has read through it, and he has agreed to it, and your agreement is with Paul and the DCMA. Paul's agreement is with the U.S. Department of Labor. So if they decide they're here to help, they're going to help Paul, and he's going to come and help you. So what we want to do is we want to give you the quick, how many of you all remember these? Cliff's Notes. I used to use this with some of the kids at the place that I worked, and they didn't understand it. They said, no, it's Spark Notes now. Now there's something even beyond this. But we're going to give you the Cliff's Notes version of kind of what's in the standards. This is what Paul signed up for. We're not going to read you 10 pages worth of documentation. This is all general boilerplate language. Okay? And if I get it wrong, John has promised to just throw something at me.
You bet.
He's got something really heavy there to hit me with. So, Section 1, it's just about kind of who's going to administer the program, what it is. Section 2 is an equal opportunity pledge. It means that you're not going to discriminate. We know that Paul's not going to do that. Section 3 is really about affirmative action. And really what it does is it talks about what you're going to talk about in one of the appendices. Whoops. It doesn't move on here. I still don't get that. Section 4 is about what are the basic qualifications of an apprentice, somebody coming on board. And these are things that you're going to define between you and Paul. You're going to modify these a little bit for yourself, but he's talking about, the long and the short of it is what you're saying is, I'm not going to discriminate against people. I want people that are capable of doing the job safely, all of the components that go with that. Section 5 is the apprenticeship agreement. This is an agreement that you will sign between you and the apprentice and DCMA. And all that is that it's saying that, yes, you told them what's in the apprenticeship program. You told them what the agreement is that you're making. They understand it. You all understand what rules you're going to live by. Section 6 about supervision of apprenticeships or apprentices and ratios. This just says how many folks you're going to have on board that know what they're doing to be able to teach those apprentices so that they know what they're doing. Term of apprenticeship is really just about, is this going to be time-based? Is it going to be competency-based? Is it hybrid? How long does it last? Is it 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year? In my case, it's probably been a lot longer than any of those. Number 8 is probationary period. It's a general, again, this is boilerplate language. If you have a different probationary period than what's defined here, you put that in your employer agreement. So that single-page document that I showed you, you put some notes in there that say, hey, on section 8, he said that the probationary period was 10 days. We're going to make it 90 days because that's what ours is. So you're just modifying it. You're making a different agreement with DCMA. Hours of work, it's obvious, apprentice wage progression. One thing you want to understand is that the value of apprenticeship is If you bring somebody in to be a CNC operator today, it might be $20 an hour. And if they tell you they're qualified, whether they are or they're not, they come in at $20 an hour because that's what you pay a CNC operator. With an apprentice, you get to pay them a lower rate. You get to pay them a learning rate, a starting rate. It might be $12 an hour, and after they've learned certain skills, they might go to $15 an hour. All you're guaranteeing is that by the time that they are fully qualified, they'll get the journey person rate. That's what your guarantee is. So you're not paying somebody for skills that they don't have. Credit for prior experience. I was talking to Gary last night. I went back for my MBA, 26 years of manufacturing. I started last week. And 26 years of running companies, and I don't know anything. I don't get any credit for prior experience. I get to take all the classes. And I feel like a total idiot, I can tell you. So, work experience, related instruction, these are things that are talking about what are you going to do with on-the-job training, on-the-job learning, on-the-job, whatever you want to call it, on-the-job work, and the related technical instruction that you're going to get from one of your community colleges or an OEM or any of those folks that Martha mentioned. Safety and health training, it's just some basics about making sure that people are safe. We all want that. Maintenance of records, this is Paul's job. He has to make sure that you've got the right records so that if the Office of Apprenticeship comes to him and says, hey, you said that you had 5 apprentices graduate last year, who were they? He's going to have those records and he's going to be able to provide that. And he's the go-between. If he needs it from you, he'll reach out to you and he'll get that information. Certificate of completion of apprenticeship, that's just talking about what the apprentice actually gets. Notice to the registration agency, that's just Paul's promising to let OA know, the Office of Apprenticeship, know when somebody starts, when somebody finishes, when somebody's meeting certain criteria. Registration, cancellation, and deregistration. That's just what does it take to register? What does it take if an employee cancels out or leaves? And how does your program deregister? If you choose to or if you can't follow the rules that you've set up for yourself, you can choose to deregister. And that's the punishment that you get. You're not registered. That's not really a problem. Amendments and modifications, that's just talking about how you make changes. Adjusting differences, complaint procedure. We all have a complaint procedure within our building. All you're going to do is you reference your own. This is how complaints are made. And then if they really don't like that, then they get to go to DCMA and say, Chad's really mean to me. Transfer of an apprenticeship and training obligation. That section is really about if Kevin's got somebody at Plastipac and he's like, I'm going to lay him off, but Chad needs somebody and they're in the same occupation, we can transfer that apprentice from one company to another and they can get credit for the work that they've done because they're in the same apprenticeship program. The next one I can't see on my slide. The responsibilities of the apprentice. Things like show up on time, promise to go to training, do the things that you're told to do, promise that you're going to try and learn. This is soft skill stuff there. This is just making them promise to do certain things. Technical assistance. John, what's technical assistance?
That's help from your organization and me.
That's us. We're here to help. Conformance with federal laws and regulations, you're saying that you're going to follow the law. None of us are going to sign up and say we're not going to follow the law. If we do, we're not signing up. Definitions is really a section of what certain things mean. Just like in every other contract, there's a list of definitions. And then the last is the official adoption. That's where Paul signed that his board approved that the DCMA could be a registered sponsor. So where the rubber meets the road for you as an employer, in Appendix A, the work process, that is where you define what is in the job. What is the on-the-job learning? What is the related technical instruction? You'll want to read that very carefully and understand, okay, we have some slight differences with that. We need a little more training here, a little less here. You make those modifications and you work with DCMA. Appendix B is that actual apprenticeship agreement. So the apprentice signs it, the sponsor signs it, you as a company will sign it, And that's just making sure that everybody knows we're all on the same page. Appendix C is the affirmative action plan. This is something that's not developed for a couple of years. You have time to put this together. A lot of times, my peers in manufacturing freak out at the words affirmative action. This is, again, not intended to be punitive. This is for you to say, we're going to make an effort to diversify our workforce. We want more people who are more like the community that we live in, and so these are the things that we're going to do. Again, you're the one who defines what those are. Somebody's not coming down and saying, this is what you have to do. You define that as an employer. Qualifications and selection procedure. What are the basic qualifications you need? Somebody's got to be over a certain age. They need to be able to lift something, a certain amount. They need to be able to pass an assessment. And those are things that you'll get help from DCMA on. And then the last is that Appendix E that I showed you, what you need to sign. So, in the spirit of manufacturers, how do you want it? By gun or by knife? You can have it this way, or you can sign a single page with Paul as a single employer as part of a program. And the advantage for you, for me as an employer of about 45 people when I was running the tooling shop, there's no way that I would have had an apprenticeship program. It's too much work. Too much work for 1 or 2 apprentices. In this case here, if I had had a manufacturing association come to me and say, you want a CNC machinist? We've got a program. You can run them through ours. You're just signing this one single document. That's the way that we would want it to be. So, now I get the distinct privilege of introducing to you, I'm going to let Paul come up because this is where the rubber really meets the road. This is him telling you about what their program is, and then after that, we're going to have some opportunity for you to huddle with us. Does anybody recognize that huddle? That's the Longhorns. I did go out searching for that one. I had to have some Longhorns. So, Paul?
Thank you.
And really, the person you all came here to listen to and speak and listen and hear from that you may not have known it coming in is a person that's already gone, a company that's already gone through all this right here in Garland, Texas, and can attest that everything we said we're going to do and everything that all the processes were actually accomplished and no one died. We have a 100% safety record and we're going to keep that. This is, and it's very important you understand, as John and Texas Workforce Commission and Lori and everybody talked about, you have a lot of support. But what does that mean for folks right here in Garland, Texas? 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when we formed the DCMA, we recognized that a big part of the Garland economy was our manufacturers. And you don't come to networking, you don't really need to be in a directory, you don't do ribbon cuttings. You make stuff. So when we formed the Manufacturers Association, it's Garland-centric, but our partners in building the manufacturing jobs and success were our countywide partners, the Community College District, the Workforce Board. So we branded it Dallas County. 99.999% of our members are in Garland. Doesn't mean we can't have members from outside Garland, but that's just the way we've grown. And as we've gone through the 10 years of doing things, and I should recognize, and they're real shy, they've got name tags down in front. Dan Barkas, PCA, is our chairman. Brandy, with Garrett, is the chairman of the task force that's really responsible for this session right here, the whole pipeline task force. You've got a structure and organization. Most of you have been a part of this for a very long time. Now, I'll do my disclaimer. If you think Paul is going to do all the things that Scott said, you don't know Paul very well. But you do know Ariel. And Ariel is the first coming of the person that's really going to put the I's on top of the dots on top of the I's and the crosses on the T's. But between us and any people that we bring on later on, because as this grows, we'll need more of that. Our commitment is to do the things that Scott said we're going to do. And what you're going to hear in just a few minutes is somebody that went through this whole process, a company that went through this whole process. looked at all the documentation with these folks, with the folks from DOL, Workforce Commission, Workforce Board, and made this happen in real terms, in real life. So this is all about making you feel like you're not going to be out there by yourself. And Scott did a great job of going through the whole, all those appendices and all those sections. Like I said, the DCMA's role is right here. And again, we don't have to go through that. But I think the part that Scott didn't really focus on, that you all hammer on us a lot, is, yeah, we can train folks if we have them. We can build skills if we have the people to build the skills. And so I get a lot of amens around the room. And that's the pipeline. That's where Erica comes in and Dallas Cannon comes in. Mark and the community college is going to talk about their pipeline. Obviously, the workforce board, and we have lots of people that play into that. Those of you that have participated with the folks here and the training that's done here, I know, Joe, you've hired folks from classes that we're doing here. We're going to expand on that. So a big part of, beyond the technical piece of apprenticeships, is that whole pipeline for recruiting. The job fairs that Lori mentioned, the one-on-ones, the pipeline through the programs, and going to Erica's high school and talk to folks that are going through their programs and getting them into pre-apprenticeship programs. As we build this out, the pipeline is really inherent in the whole process of apprenticeship, starting with students in 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, getting them their training so that when they hit high school graduation, they're a year or 2 years along the way of getting into your shop. That's inherent in the process that we're building. So that's us. That's our role. We are certified. I'm certifiable, but we are certified. And I want to bring up the person who is the most credible in the room as it relates to Chad Brummett, who not only sits on our DCMA and is one of the founding members of our Manufacturers Association, sits on our board of directors, along with Dan and others that went through this process. And step by step, you can't get a board of directors to sign off on something that they don't feel comfortable with. And so when the DCMA took this to our board, it was these folks that said, we've looked at it, we've looked at every line, we've looked at every word. Not only have we looked at it, we're signing up. So let's give a big round of applause for Chad Brummett, Carly Company, Carly at Porter Company, who's actually done it.
All right, thank y'all very much. I kind of cringe when somebody says most credible in this room of experts, but we'll go with that, right? I am the most credible here for Carly's version of this. And one thing I kind of hoped everybody picked up on when we heard from Scott and others earlier was kind of one theme. That was actually kind of flexible, right? You know, we talked about, will this work for me? How fast can it move? Will it allow me to hire the right people, put the right people? The biggest thing that really came out for us during the entire process was just that. It's flexible, right? But we all know manufacturers, we don't like being put in a box, right? So the first thing is, do I really have to do all this stuff? Is this really my box? And the answer is yes, you really have to go in this box. But you get to draw the box however you want. So if you're like me, you don't necessarily draw within the lines very well, just build a bigger box, right? And that's been probably the biggest thing for us with this entire process, is it is very flexible. It's accommodating to our needs. We could go as fast or as slow as we needed for the organization to be able to accept what it was that's coming down at them, right? Because like you mentioned, you have HR, you have ops, you have the people who are actually having to sign the apprenticeship agreement themselves. You have multiple different players that come at things from very different angles and have very different needs that have to be served. So if this process wasn't flexible and didn't have a good roadmap to guide you down, it would be a train wreck right from the get-go. But that's the nice thing about the program, is it's proven, gives you the step-by-step process. If you do this from A to Z, you will have a successful outcome. And thus far, that's what we've seen. It's been A to Z. To Bernie and Jerry and Uri and some of the others, they've almost made it look easy, right? I'm not going to say it's easy, because it's definitely not. We see all the stuff. But that's the type of support that you get, taking a very complex process, making it something that's digestible and easy for us as employers to live with. Because at the end of the day, this is the most vital part to our teams, right? We have to have people to produce what we need, but we also have businesses to run, right? So that's the thing. We can't have something that becomes so consuming that we lose fact of what we're actually trying to do, which is build stuff, make stuff, right? So that's been the biggest thing for us. So next few slides is just kind of going through what some of that documentation actually looks like and some of the examples. So thus far to date, as you can see, we actually started off with a CNC operator. That was our biggest skill set. We have this very specific program for a customer where we're doing a doubling of revenues in less than 6 months. So we're obviously bringing in a lot of people. So we were able to custom fit this one program for that. Since that point in time, we've already gone in and we're looking at welding and industrial maintenance techs on what we can do to add into this entire process for us. Once we got that first one kind of worked through, the second one went from working of weeks down to a couple days to get it through the process, which was really nice. Job descriptions. At the end of the day, now we're through the point where everybody's been selected. Now it's just what training do we need to come back to, and that's the RTI, and that's where the community college district comes in, and they start building the training around what we need based off of those agreements. So next slide. So there you go. So really, this is the standards as we start getting into it, and it's probably a 10-page document, very easy. And again, like I said, the nice thing is you're reading through. If you see something that doesn't really fit with what you need, you just change it. Uri's been amazing to work with on the standards. Said, hey, this welding really doesn't fit for us. We need more MIG and TIG. We don't really need structural stuff. No problem. They pull it back, come back with AWS certified requirements, plug that in there, right? Very easy and flexible. So one of the big things here, there's no, pull it up there. All right, pointer doesn't work, but the type of occupation is you get to choose. Do you want classroom? Do you want all hands-on application? Or do you want a hybrid, right? Where you have some of both. And so you can see we did a competency-based approach. So there's going to be some classroom, and then our journey workers, that's the knowledge base we're really trying to leverage. Our journey workers take that classroom that they learn, and then teach them how to apply that to what we need, right? And that's the biggest thing for us was, all right, somebody can learn how to program a machining center, but how does that actually apply once they get into our workforce, get into our building? And so we get to take that knowledge base, that aging workforce that we have, and then teach those new skills on how to apply that into our workforce, which has been really beneficial so far. The wage schedule, the negotiated wage schedule. If you're like me, I hear the word negotiations, and I like to negotiate, but that kind of implies a haggle. It's really not. You up front, you set up and you say, all right, this is what somebody coming in at zero knowledge, this is what we're going to pay them. Then once they go through this progression, whether it's a 2-year, 3-year progression, each step of the way, they're going to get this much. So everybody starts at the same point, ends at the same point, right? And the best part is, let's say you have somebody that is not a full setup person, but they're definitely not a day one worker either. You can actually give them credit for where they're at, and as long as they meet that midpoint in your wage progression, then they get credit for that, and they get to step into the apprenticeship program at that midway point, right? So it kind of develops that pipeline at different levels, fitted to the person's needs. On the left, that's all the training. Now remember, that seems kind of daunting, right? But we're talking about 2- and 3-year programs. And again, for us, we did the hybrid model. We want a little bit of classroom, then we want hands-on application. A little more classroom, application, right? So it's going to be more of that spread out journey. What is that called?
Journey worker.
To the journey worker.
So what if you don't have a journey worker? Sorry, I know this is not a
No.
question answer.
Fine, Jessica, go ahead.
But I mean, say it's a new competence, right?
Yep.
You have a new process that's entering your factory or something, a new equipment. You don't have a journey worker for the apprentice, so then what happens?
I'll take it, and then if John's still in the room and wants to take it, he can take it. So we developed a brand new program in Pittsburgh where we teach people how to work with startup companies. They're usually the first one hired. And so who their supervisor then is they're usually working for some Carnegie Mellon University startup. So their supervisor is actually, the founder engineer, and they're doing their early small batches. So that's who we assign as your journey worker so you have to, kind of make them fully confident. But so that's how we've done it, where it's brand new, never been done before, it's a first hire. I mean, so we do a lot of early stage startups, but that's who we have to list as the journey worker, is their immediate supervisor who's overseeing them and who has a sense who's going to be training them on what they're doing. So, John, I don't know if you're still in the room. Do you want to answer that? Did he leave?
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, but that's how we manage that in a brand new category.
And so Jessica doesn't feel bad. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to yell them out. It's all good. Then mention soft skills, right? So first thing is, you don't have to hire people straight off the street, right? You can use the people that you already have in your workforce. In fact, the first 10 apprentices that we have are all incumbent workers for us here in Garland. So we're able to use this as a way for career progression. You talk about getting people bought into the process, getting that loyalty into the team. You're taking people that have been with you and saying, I'm now giving you an opportunity to expand your skills, take your career to that next level with us, right? Also, if you do have to go hire new, what it allows you to do is you don't have to go try to find this magic silver bullet skill set, right? Which is sometimes what we try to do. We say, all right, I need to hire this specific skill. Well, now I have a pathway to get this skill developed. So let me go hire now more off of my aptitude, attitude, cultural fits, those things that develop long-term solutions for us. And that, then you put that person into this program, you get that skill set developed along the way, right? So that's one of the other things that we like about this is we're using it as a reward system for the incumbent workers. And then depending upon what we have for growth, we may have to go out and hire direct for that to fill that additional need as well. But then the soft skills, that's part of their assessments. So your journey worker, the person that's kind of in charge of them, they have to make sure they get the feedback both to Paul directly, not Ariel, but Paul, as well as internally and the apprentice themselves. They have to give them that feedback that says, yes, they can come to work on time. Yes, they know how to interact in a team environment. Whatever those skill sets are that we define when we make this, that's what they'll be measured up against, right? So it's not just the hard technical skill, but it's also teaching that soft skill that'll make them good team members long term. Related training, so you can see 350 hours, and this is for maintenance tech, so it's safety, refrigeration. That was actually one for us. We went back and we said we need to actually modify the normal standard because we needed HVAC techs, not just normal maintenance techs. If you think about it, most of our equipment has chillers that all takes Freon, plus all the ACs. So they were able to craft the standards that would fit our needs by taking something out, putting something else in, and we still meet the standard. So they still end up with the same certification at the end of the day. You see, then each of those up top, you end up with a detailed description behind it. Then this right here, this is where really the hard work comes in. This form here, what you're going to do is you're going to take, essentially give a census for every person that could potentially fill in with this level. And you're going to say, start identifying who is an apprentice, who is a journey worker, because you do have to have a certain ratio. So there is a little bit of front-end legwork on the HR side. But again, it's worth it on the back end because it's good to have this information if you think about it. Sometimes it's just painful to have it all in one place in a spreadsheet. But it's actually been very beneficial for us to actually go through and align competencies and pay and everything along those lines. And then once you provide this over, that's when you start getting your contracts developed. And again, Yuri and Bernie and the team, they do all that work. You just give them this list, they start developing all the contracts for you.
Someday Paul will do that.
And someday Paul will do that, yes.
Paul will do that.
And then at the end of the day, this is the big letters. So this is the commitment that you're going to make. You're going to say how many apprentices are you looking at putting into the program? And remember, it's not just day one, I have to sign up 45 people or 5 people or 1 person, right? It's over the course of X number of years, I expect to move this many people through an apprenticeship program. And that was one of the hardest things for us to kind of get our head wrapped around is it's, as manufacturers, you're saying if I'm giving a commitment to something that's a very kind of short term, I'm going to produce this in X period of time. And this is a little fuzzier in that you have a longer period of time and it's not all on day one. But when you start looking at it from the bigger picture, 45 people across multiple years, especially when you take into account most of them are incumbent workers, it's actually a pretty easy number to attain. And it's also the benefit far outweighs any type of activity it takes to get us there. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Nick or Paul.
So, and I got to tell you, I'd like to kind of just say a couple of things. Just to jump on, I have a couple of notes about just to follow up to, to the process with the employer, just to kind of clarify. So when, we talk about competency, time-based, or hybrid, so what we've opted to do here is 100% competency-based programs. And what that means is there's a projected number of hours, 2,000 hours is a year, 4,000 is 2 years, and all the way to, usually machinists can go all the way up to 4 year. But to the point about competency-based, and just to clarify, what that means. So if you hire somebody who is, let's say, you see that list of what competencies are, and I know we weren't showing, CNC operator, we were showing the newer standard that we just developed. But when you look at 100% of those competencies and you're hiring someone, and you can get credit for, experience or knowledge that they already have when you bring them on board. So, it's this notion of, are you hiring somebody at 100% of competency, 10% of competency, 50%? And what you now have is your standard, and you can look at this and you can evaluate people and do assessments on, where they are. And you might need to hire somebody, get them on board, and then start doing assessments and evaluations based on what you're seeing. So not everybody walks in and is actually capable of performing everything you did. But what we've done on all 3 of the work processes we've put together are competency-based. So that means that if you did time-based and somebody fulfills those requirements and hits their year or 2 years, they would automatically get their certification. On competency-based, it's really, that time period is a structure of traditionally what it takes to get to that level of competency. But we all know people learn at different rates. And so some people can go through very quickly and they master certain skills. And as you know, then there are some people who have great technical skills and never quite get their own soft skills, right? And the behavioral. And we always tell our trainees, this is why people get fired, is not because their technical skills are bad, it's their behavior. But I think that's part of what you can include in the related training instruction or some of those soft skill behaviors. So I just want to clarify. So on competency, it's all based on someone being fully competent in that position, and that's what you're trying to obtain. It's not about time-based. And then I also think on the the spreadsheet that he put together, what happens from that spreadsheet, that's what forms then. We asked them to do that, to fill out that spreadsheet, and because what you were able to do then was to tell us who were the people who were fully competent, right? So you take a list of all your CNC operators and say, well, here's 20 people who are already fully competent. They're already performing this position and they are ready for certification. So there goes your journey workers. So we can enter them into the apprentice system and we can essentially make them your journey workers. So that's one way to do it. If you have people who are fully competent, and that is who's then going to supervise your apprentices. So you can look at your entire workforce and each occupational category that you're going to do apprenticeship in and figure out, and this is an evaluative process, based on this standard, which of my employees in this occupation are fully competent, and who could I then submit to get to journey worker status, and will they become journey workers? Because you're telling us through a competency-based system that these are people who are fully competent to perform that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, I mean.
Right,
the problem
when
is
they're
if you
there.
have a department that
Right.
doesn't have
Yes.
a fully competent.
Yeah, and so when we talked about industrial maintenance technician, for example, I know, he has two, right? So if you've got one who's kind of fully competent and one who's a new hire, you're right, that's easier. When there isn't somebody there, that can get challenging. And the question is, who can be that journey worker in the organization? And that's the question is, well, who is there every day to train them? And that's an internal part too. Sometimes you can do front-loaded training, so you can send somebody to gain the competencies and do a little bit more of. That's when you saw the term front-loaded training. So that's what front-loaded apprentice models do, is they'll do that first. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify some of what you heard. But thanks. Get ahead, Mark. Paul.
And John walked back in the room. John, while you were out, there was a question. If you don't have right there easily identified journey worker, how do you get the program going? So we'll get the two of you linked up. So John will answer that question. That's a John question. So I walked off with all my agenda. Can you? All right. Again, when I talked about forming the Dallas County Manufacturers Association, it was in recognition of who our partners with. And since we live in a community college facility, since I got here in '89, we've been partners with Richland and the community college system. So it's just appropriate that we have folks from the Dallas County Community College. And I'm not sure who, did Mark?
Well, we're going to start with Nick and Roy.
Nick and Roy and Mark, okay. So the folks that work at the district office from Dallas County, Nick Graff and Roy Bond, and they're going to do a tag team of some kind because things are both up here. So let's welcome the Nick and Roy show to the podium.
It's not normal for Paul to say appropriate with my name usually in the same sentence. So, all right. My name is Nick Graff. I've been with the district now for a little over a year. I came from Minnesota where I was involved in a lot of different types of manufacturing. Got involved with metal fabrication. I served with the Minnesota Precision Manufacturers Association. I served with the Fabricators and Manufacturers Association out of Rockford, Illinois. And then I'm with the National Coalition of Advanced Technology Centers. So I get to go around the country and see a lot of different schools that are doing really cool things, meet a lot of different manufacturers. And when I first got into this, it was so crystal clear to me that the apprenticeship model was the best opportunity for the schools to work with manufacturers and employers. But yet the people that were the instructors at our school said, oh no, we can't do that. We can't get involved with companies at that point because that's not our business. But it is our business because we have to prepare the workforce. So in order to really accomplish this, you have to have great partners. And the workforce groups, the WIBs, the employers associations, a lot of times we use the temporary agencies, the manufacturing associations. Everybody's got to work in conjunction and coordinate so that we can do this. And to have somebody like Paul with the Dallas County Manufacturing Association step up and become the leader for this is, in my perspective, is pretty cool. So it's an honor to be part of this. The part of apprenticeship that sometimes is misunderstood is, like, we all know the technical skills that you have to have, but the related training instruction, the things like soft skills, the basic skills, the applied mathematics and fundamentals and measuring and inspection, things like that. That's the stuff that I was always intent in making sure that our students got, because it's just like you play sports. You've got to learn the fundamentals before you can do the advanced stuff. So what we want to do with the related training instruction is just follow the model. It's 144 hours annually that has to be accompanying the hands-on. And I think it's crucial that we get the right people that are that like to work with their hands, bottom line. The best example I could give you was recently I was at a meeting, and one of the local universities said, we have people in our aerospace engineering program that should be in here. They should be at your school, on your campuses, doing hands-on things. They're not theoretically, engaged. That's not the way that their mind works. So it's got to be people that, that have hands-on mentality. So, 144 is just the model. It's not you have to just make sure that you have accompanying education to go with this. And that can be problem solving. That can be, I don't know if you guys are golfers, but there's the old adage of show up, shut up, and keep up. That's, so what we want people to do is show up to work, dress appropriately, work in teams, handle information, and data, and hopefully pass a drug test. I know that 7 out of 10 employees around the country oftentimes can't pass a drug test. So that's that deal. In terms of the occupations that are appropriate for apprenticeships, you've got your traditional things like electricians and plumbers, but those are mostly union, and I know that that's one of the things that scares people in a non-union environment is talking about that. But apprenticeship it's not union-based at all. What it is that it creates loyalty. And to me, that's the beauty of it, is that there's a loyalty that the employer shows to the employee. You've got my pledge, my commitment to train you and to pay you. Meanwhile, that employee knows I'm going to be here for 3 years, minimum. And maybe when I'm done with that 3 years, I'll move on. But there's another thing, don't train them, or train them and they'll leave, don't train them and they'll stay. So we want people that are trained and are going to become loyal to you as well. So occupational category within. In terms of things that I know we're doing right now, so we've got the CNC operator, we've got the industrial maintenance tech, we've got the welding program. And I would like to see something to do with PLCs and robotics. I'm sure that a lot of you guys are working with automation and things like that. So I think that that's the next logical program that we might be able to do. And in terms of what our delivery model is, we have 7 campuses in the district. Not all of them are involved in manufacturing, but each of them has a non-credit part of the school that has what we call adjunct faculty that they aren't full-time, that are affiliated with credit programs. What they do is that they work on a contract basis based upon their skills. And that's one of the things that I would like to alert you guys to. I'm guessing that there's employees within your organizations that have the ability to train. And the best thing that we have always is a full bench of talented trainers. That's the best asset we can have. So I would ask each one of you, if you've got people that are interested in becoming a trainer, it's always better to take somebody with industry knowledge and make them a teacher than take a teacher and try to teach them to do something technical. So I would ask, that would be my appeal to you, is survey your folks and see if you've got anybody that wants to do that. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to a man who's got a lot more experience with this group than I do.
Hello, for those of you who I haven't met, my name is Roy Bond. I've been with the district full-time about 19 years now. I've worked at a couple of different colleges, including Richland and Eastfield, and now I'm downtown doing penance for that. And Lori, who's gone now, said something earlier about people who sit around in a college classroom for 4, 6, 7 years, don't know how to work anymore. Well, I can attest to that. I learned how to work in my dad's gas station when I was 10 years old, and then in the military, and then I went to college for about 10 years, and so I've had to work in education ever since then because I don't know how to work anymore. But Many of you have had experiences working with the colleges, primarily with Richland College, and probably some of you have had an experience that I hear from a lot of folks in business and industry who have worked with the college and said, hey, I need this kind of training and I need it done like this, and the college says, oh yeah, we can do that, no problem, except I know you only need 4 hours of training, but we really need to make it 32 hours because that fits our model, and it goes back to what Nick said earlier about, it's not about us. This is about you guys, and we want to make sure you understand that. What I'm going to talk about now is an internal process we're going to use to figure out how to best meet the needs of this program. It's going to be behind the scenes for you guys. You're not going to have to worry about this process, but I just kind of want to let you know how we're going to go about bringing to bear the resources of a 7-college monster district here to best meet the needs of this program. So the RFP process, the request for proposals is going to be written by the DCMA and a core team that's going to figure out exactly what they need, when they need it, how they want it delivered, what it's going to look like, what it's going to be composed of, and a lot of that you saw been talked about in how this whole process works. But once it's decided this is what we need, then that RFP is going to come to us, and we're going to do our little thing behind the scenes with it and shop it to all 7 colleges and figure out how we can best meet it. So it's not going to be about, well, this company is closest to this college, so we're going to have that college handle it. Well, that college may not have all the resources to do that the most effective way. So we're going to figure out behind the scenes through this process who's going to be best to deliver this training at your location, or however you want it, and when you want it, and in the time frame you want it, and what it's going to look like. And then that decision, the colleges will basically submit their proposals for what it would look like if they did it. And in some cases it may be a collaboration of several colleges coming together to meet the needs of one of these, and that's fine. We will encourage proposal submissions that look like that. But it's going to be the DCMA committee then that makes those decisions based on those proposals and said, yeah, we want this proposal to go forward, and if it needs tweaking, we'll go back and tweak it and all of that. But that's kind of in a nutshell what the process is going to look like. And again, it's about, we've got a lot of resources as a district. We're a huge monster district, one of the largest in the countries. As Nick said, we have, and we like to maintain a bench of extremely competent trainers, most of whom are adjunct faculty or are third-party providers that we contract with, because they're out there every day doing these jobs, and those are the people we want doing the training. So in some cases, we may be hiring your folks and working out some sort of a arrangement with you so that we pay them and supplant part of what they might make working for you so that they can train your people, not the on-the-job training part, but in the RTI realm. So I think that's it. Thank you all very much.
Mark Hayes is somebody that, when you talk about behind the scenes, Mark is the guy who's the vice chancellor for all of economic development and workforce development for the entire district. And a lot has been said, but to put a bow around this and put an emphasis around it, I'd like to have Mark come up and talk about the district commitment in making all this work.
Well, thank you, Paul. You get there's some slides for you and you've never seen the slides, and so don't know what's going to come. When I was in college, we had the new thing. You flip the switch and the screen would come down out of the ceiling, and it was always a big joke to put the Playboy centerfolds on the screen so the instructor would flip the switch and it'd come dropping down. So that's what I'm worried about. Yeah. But anyway, I was on the phone before I came here. I was talking with one of my instructors from last summer at the Kennedy School at Harvard, and he's very passionate Red Sox and Patriots fan and everything. And I said, well, I've got to go to the apprenticeship meeting. It was apprenticeship. He says, that's pretty rare in Texas, isn't it? And I said, well, about as rare as non-cheating professional sports teams in Massachusetts. So apologies to our Boston friends, but that's not the first time they've heard it. So, but anyway, this is, I mean, even in the upper echelons of higher ed, apprenticeship, they know about it, they hear about it, and I'm very excited about it simply because of the opportunities that it can afford, not only you, but afford the college district, what it can afford our residents of Dallas County. I think it's tremendous. But I look at things. I've been on the phone the last couple of days. Been doing a lot of talks with individuals concerning our friends down in the coastal area, the problems they've been having, because we want to see what of course, and make sure that they recover and they get the resources they need. But we're also looking at it from our standpoint, from a workforce perspective in Dallas, of what we're looking at here. We are already starting to see a huge influx of people leaving. They're leaving primarily the North Texas area, carpenters, heavy equipment operators, truck drivers, all heading to the coast. Going to be followed by plumbers, masons. It's you got people scared for workforce issues in this area. I pulled some data yesterday. This was in construction, even before hurricanes. The average salary construction worker was $8,000 higher in Houston than it is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so now you're going to see those wages increase dramatically on the coast because you're getting all this federal dollars pouring in, a lot of private dollars coming. And so there's a big concern about workforce issues. And so that brings it to this point of pipeline. What are we going to do? If you heard Mr. Bezos and his comments this morning about what Amazon's going to do. Amazon's looking for another headquarters to put somewhere in the country. They're looking for either urban or suburban areas with 1 million population or more, and they're going to build this new headquarters and employ 50,000 people, a $5 billion investment. Lori and I met last week with a company that wants to bring a center to North Texas, wants to hire 2,000 people, average starting wage $35 an hour, and does not require a bachelor's degree. So when I'm talking about this, Richard Florida wrote the book, The War for Talent. We're in the middle of it. You people haven't birthed enough babies. There's just not enough coming up. And immigration, that's off the table, at least, for the time being. So what do we do here? We got 500,000 people living below the poverty line in Dallas County. We got 42,000 jobs right now in Dallas County that pay $24 an hour or more that we can't fill, that require an associate degree or less. There's a huge disconnect there. They're not buying what we're selling. So what do we do? How do we connect with people to get them into this pipeline? I think apprenticeship is one of the ways that we do this. Connecting to existing programs at DCCCD, and I got here a little bit late, but I know we talked some about the early college high schools. I believe we have 31 this fall in Dallas County partnering with high schools. Some are what we call P-TECH programs. Get those kids as early as 9th grade, get them into programs, and when they graduate, they have the high school diploma and the associate's degree at the same time. The thing is that we want to get them, for me anyway, personally, I want to get them in those skilled trade areas. You've heard me say this before, for those of you who've heard me talk. The primary role of the educational system in this country from pre-K through grade 20 is that we're training people to go to work. That's what we do. And if we're not focused on that, then our economy will go in the tank. Because we simply do not have the demographics. I talked to a major defense contractor just in the last few days that pays good money. 72% of their workforce is eligible for retirement in 3 years. Some of you may have similar numbers. I don't know, but it's people like me. I don't want to work. I don't want to, but I will probably work a little bit longer. But the thing is that you see this huge bubble of people hitting retirement age, and the pipeline's just not there to fill this. And so, what are you doing to grab onto those people? What are you doing to compete against an IT firm that's paying $35 an hour? What are you doing to compete against natural disasters that happen in other parts of the state or the country and the workforce heading that way? What are you doing differently? You got openings now. You've had these open, I've heard this all the time, and this is no slam on you all. I've heard this for years. I've been in this business for years. You need people. I go to hospitals, talking nursing. We need nurses. I've heard that since I can remember. So what are you doing differently to bring them in? How do we connect with the pipeline? So, advertise the open positions for employers in the system, develop administrative and teaching staff that work with apprenticeship programming. That's something internally we have to do, because we're learning this stuff. Our faculty don't understand apprenticeship. How do we get this done? How do we get them on board? How do we get them to understand this? That this is not a traditional role for community colleges, at least in Texas. It's about to be for us. It's a game changer. And because we feel this is the way that we fill that pipeline for you, that we can help do that. High school students earning, of course, college credits leading to degree programs and/or apprenticeships. I don't tell people don't go get a 4-year degree. Don't go get a graduate degree. I'm in the education business. I want people to get as much education as they can. But I also understand that you probably went to college the same way I did. I worked. I worked full time. I went to college at night. I went to college on the weekends. And now, of course, there wasn't online when I was in school, but there is now. Online is critical. But that's how we go to school today. That's how we work today. So making the connections. So we look at the current occupations: the CNC machine operator, industrial maintenance tech, the welding programs. Basically, I'm here to say to you, whatever you need, the answer is yes. The only person in our district of 7,000 employees who is authorized to say no is the chancellor. And I ain't him. So until the chancellor says no, the answer is yes. Count on it. Tell us about new occupations. We need your help. We can't wave a magic wand. We have got to have your input. We've got to have your expertise. It takes effort on our part. It takes effort on your part to make this happen. Future commitment letters from each of you in order to understand how large a system to develop in years 1, 2, and 3. I want thousands of people in apprenticeship programs in the Dallas area within 3 years. Plain and simple. Thousands. That's what I want to see. And then the onboard employer today with one-on-one assessments for capturing your needs. We also need your help in trying to come up with how do we fill this pipeline. We're, like I say, partnering with schools throughout Dallas County, with high schools. These kids are getting college education and not even pay anything. We cover the tuition. Dallas ISD, for example, covers the learning materials, covers the books. The opportunity is there. How do we make the connection so that they're a viable employee base for you? And Nick was talking the other day about in welding, for example. I think welding helmets are just the coolest thing ever. Because when I was in high school, it was the old, now. But he says no, it's not good enough anymore. But one of the things they did to attract kids into welding was that they made the helmets look like these things, the things they see in video games. They made them look like hockey goalie masks. And kids, ooh, that's cool, And you're thinking that's pretty shallow, but then again, they're kids. That's all they know is shallow. They don't know deep. So if that, whatever works. And so it's critical. There are big issues that all of us are going to have to face. The drug issue that was talked about. As more states legalize hippie lettuce, it's going to become more of an issue. And I will venture to say, how many of you, if I said 15 or 20 years ago that same-sex marriage would be legal in the state of Texas, how many would you, oh, you're out of your mind. Well, I'll put this to you, in 10 years, it'll be legal in every state in the country. It's going to be legal in every state in the country. I worked many years in Oklahoma. My family's still there. Oklahoma's going to legalize medical marijuana. Who would have thought it, And when you legalize it, the medical, it's coming. The full-blown thing's coming. Recreational use is coming. So anyway, I'm here to tell you that I am probably the least qualified expert in this room. But I want you to know that we're here to be a resource for you And we're not here to throw up any roadblocks. We want to stay legal, we want to stay ethical, we want to do it the right way, but we also want to be able to kick down any damn roadblocks that are there. That's what my job is, and that's what we want to do to help you. So please let me know. Paul knows, he can get a hold of me, and he knows how to call me, and these guys are here as well, and we've got the entire resources of the college district there to help you. So let us know.
It took a while to get here, but, and I've been looking at our list. Anything that we didn't cover from the expectations, anything that we've left? Well, now it's time to get real specific. Lauren's got some forms, some survey forms that she wants to hand out. This is the opportunity that we promised that would be a part of this. This is the one-on-one. You have all the folks in the room from the Department of Labor, Workforce Commission, the Dallas Workforce Board, Jobs for the Future, those things. They're all here for one purpose, to sit with you individually to answer your questions. Ideally, you start a process today that builds to get you where you want to go. But you got to get your questions answered first. So that's what this is about. There's still plenty of refreshments. Bernie, how do you want to organize this? Yes, you can, and I won't. So you can.
So what we'd like you to do is take a look at this assessment form. So some of you might have several occupational categories that you're interested in apprenticing. Some of you might just have one. The form is kind of, it says others, on the form as far as, so the three that we've already created the work processes for are the three that we have listed. I know from earlier meetings with some of you, there are other occupations you would like to apprentice that we haven't done yet. So what I'd like you to do is list that occupation, or however many there are, and then let us have a sense of, how many you believe you'd be able to apprentice in a year in that occupational category. And some of this is, so the purpose of this is kind of your needs assessment. What do you need? And this is kind of a questionnaire about what that is, so that what I'd like you to do is when you fill this out, I'm going to ask each of the group that's been up here speaking, who are experts in apprenticeship, to sit with you one-on-one and go through this form with you. And I'd like for you to kind of fill it out, not because you're going to keep it, you're going to turn it in then to DCMA here, and Paul and the whole team can then develop and get back to you as far as when, how, all of that. So there will be follow-up that comes from this. But the point of the one-on-one sit and talk with someone, every little possible question you have, we want to make sure you leave here understanding it. So if you say, well, I wanted to do this and this, how would I do that? That's why the folks who have been on this panel have stayed here. They're here, in the same way that, there's a whole group of us here. We probably brought in, 10, 12 people who can answer every question you have about apprenticeship. That's it. If I can't, somebody here can. So, but what we'd like to do is take your time, fill this out, and then in the back of the room, that's right, why there are round tables. If I can get kind of one of you at each table, so Scott, move over next to Justin and tell Justin to get off the table. And then, so if I can get one of each apprentice expert on a table, and then when you finish that, go sit with somebody and kind of go through this questionnaire, talk about which occupations that you're interested in and what your needs are. When you see your timing, do you want to do this right away? Do you want to do it in a year from now, in 6 months? I mean, those are kind of questions then. That's the information Paul's organization needs to really support you in building a system. And then each of the folks here can work with you, just like we did with Carly, to develop the work processes and get you the standards that you need for your occupational categories, and then get you into a registered situation. So does that help everybody? Yeah? Good. So they'll be back there. I'm going to have Ori from our team too kind of be up here. If there's an occupation that you don't know about and you'd like to ask questions, come talk to him about that. And that way we can have kind of a conversation about occupations as well, if you're unsure as to. But either way, write them down and then go sit and talk with folks. Okay? Thanks. Okay, Paul.
Thank you all. You're in the process. This is exactly what happened from the very beginning. This is how Carly got to where they are. Questions like this and the helpful hands along the way. We wouldn't be here without, I know it's not Bernie's team, it's Jobs for the Future and all those folks there. But it's, we've assembled these folks today to answer your questions, to get this process started. The only thing you're committing to is getting your questions answered. The rest of it is on us to get you where you want to go. If you were sincere in telling us over the years that you needed skills, we were sincere in listening to you. This you heard from 40,000 feet, 30,000 feet, 20,000 feet on the ground and underwater, that folks are committed to making it happen. So thank you for your attendance, and we'll continue this process. So get your forms filled, get to somebody. I said, success at the end of the day is that you get your questions answered. So if you leave without your questions answered, that's on you. The rest of it's on Paul, whoever that guy is. Thank you.